Joshua. I hope you've had a good week, and thanks for joining us at Gracegate today. If it's your first time, my week was excellent, like super, the best week I've ever had. And the reason I say that is because we started it off with some great football on Sunday. And for those of you who were there at the Fiji Fives, I hope you enjoyed it. And you would know that there was a star player, and his name was what? Joshua, okay? Very own Josh on the bass here. It was just amazing. It was a great day, and yeah, we didn't win. Our team didn't win. But that's what we do at Gracegate. We give grace, and we're pretty humble. So, we let another, opposing team win. But it was a great time. But this week, something really stood out for me. And it was, I don't know if you guys can remember, but a couple of probably months, maybe a year back, I interviewed a guy on stage here, and his name was Leon Combrink. Can you guys remember him? Now, Leon went in this week for surgery again. He's a young guy who struggled with cancer pretty much all his life. He's living with a brain tumor at the moment. Cancer again appeared in his, I think it was his jawbone or sort of in his lower lip. And so he went for surgery again this week. And I went to go and visit him this week. And when I went to the hospital, I was just thinking about my week and all the little crazy things that have been happening in this past week, and arrived at the hospital, and I had a seat at his bed, and we were just chatting. And I mean, this guy is someone who has seriously been on the battlefield, all right? Like, he has, like, scars that, like, he can just show you. And I was sitting there, and he was just, so proud of all his scars. He showed me how they've just taken so much of his skin off his leg. It's as raw as ever. And they've taken that skin to put on his jaw, and they've taken some of his skin, they've cut him up all the way up to his jawbone. And I just sat there, and I just said, God, freak, how selfish am I to complain about the little petty things that happen in my week? I left there, and I sort of just thought a bit in context again of life and the blessings that I have in life. And the next 2 days passed, and then I went to see him again, and surgery went all great. And he said, I must please share with everyone that he is feeling good. And when I thought of this whole series, Joshua, his name just comes to my mind the whole time, because he is probably the most courageous guy that I know of, and someone who is constantly, continuously just putting his trust and his faith in God. So keep praying for him. But I thought I'd share that with you. So I don't know how your week's been, but mine's been great, okay? And I'm excited about this series of Joshua. So before we start, I just want to say a prayer. So let's bow our heads. God, I just want to be still today. And I just want to say, God, we are, and you know why we are. You know why we woke up this morning, how we got out of bed, how we drove to Gracegate. And for whatever reason we are, I pray that you can do something in our lives, that you can speak some words into our life that can teach us some really valuable wisdom and also some application for whatever season we're journeying through today. So just take control now, God, and teach us through your word is our prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. Do you guys like that graphic? Yeah? It's pretty, I don't know, bold, scary, courageous, daring. If you're on Instagram, you would have seen all the posts, the couple of, this past week going up. But the story of Joshua, actually, as we saw today, starts off with the story of Moses. And if you know nothing about the Old Testament or about the Hebrew nation and their leadership, Moses was probably one of the most influential leaders to ever have lived on this earth. He was a guy who, when God called him to lead his people, he said about 1,000 excuses why he couldn't and why he shouldn't be leading God's people. But eventually, after a while, Moses actually gained courage, and actually he said, hey, I am going to take control, and I'm just going to use what's in my hand. And God used Moses in a huge way. For those of you who know the story, Moses at some point actually was called, and he was actually called to take all of God's people who were actually in slavery in Egypt, and he said, hey, Moses, I want to send you to deliver my people from Pharaoh. So I actually want you to drive all of them and bring them out of their slavery that they're living in. So Moses went, he approached Pharaoh, and he pretty much proclaimed continuously with courage and bravery, and he said, hey, God is telling me to tell you to please let his people go. As the story goes, eventually after miraculous plagues fell, Pharaoh eventually lets the Israel nation go, and Moses is that leader who leads them out of this sort of slavery through the wilderness to what God said was the promised land. He said, hey, you are my people, you are my chosen race, and I actually want to take you to a promised land. I've got something planned for your life, and I want to lead you there. And Moses sort of journeyed with his people. And to my understanding, I could be wrong, but there were about 2 to 2.5 million people that he was leading through the desert. All right? Think a bit of that. And on their journey, what should have only been a 40-day journey turned out to be a 40-year journey. All right? Can you imagine everyone just living together for 40 years, traveling in and day out through the wilderness, through the desert? As you can imagine, people complained, actually to a point that people actually said, Moses, we wish we were back in slavery. We wish we were actually back in Egypt in slavery, because that was so much better than where you have led us to now. But God still used Moses in miraculous ways. Through the night, they were led by a pillar of fire, and through the day, God gave them a cloud. And he led this nation, even they approached the Red Sea. He parted the Red Sea. The whole nation walked through the Red Sea. He did miracle after miracle after miracle. He gave manna to the nation when they were hungry, just fell from heaven. Food just fell from heaven. And continuously, God provided for his people through the leadership of Moses. Now, Joshua turns up in the story because Joshua was one of those slaves who was born in Egypt. And he was actually under sort of the leadership of Moses. He was actually Moses' right-hand man. He was one of his assistants. And we heard earlier on now in this video that Moses, at a time, he was getting old, and he was starting to ask the questions like, hey, who is now going to take my place? Who is going to lead this nation? And God reveals to him, and he says, hey, Moses, I want you to tell Joshua that Joshua is going to take leadership, and he's going to lead all these people. It's like half of New Zealand through the desert to the promised land. It's quite an interesting story because Moses, he actually is on the border of the promised land. He's out of slavery. He's let everyone out of slavery, out of Egypt, and they're at the border of the promised land, which God had actually promised to Moses. But he says, hey, actually, you're going to die, Moses, and now I want Joshua to lead these people. So we're picking up the story, and this, where we're going to pick up the story today, there's going to be a lot of reading, and I hope you follow through, but there's going to be a point to everything that I want to share today. And we pick up the story of Joshua when Moses is actually speaking to the whole nation, to all the Israelites, and this is what he says. He's just said to them, hey guys, there's a new leader coming. I can't live forever. I know God has made crazy miracles, but I'm not going to lead forever. And there's another leader who's going to take my reins. And Then Moses goes and he speaks to Joshua, and he lays hands on Joshua, and this is what he says to him. He says, hey, then Moses summoned Joshua and said to him in the presence of all Israel. I love that word, actually, summoned, because it's like, hey, there's no choice almost. Joshua, all right, I'm summoning you. You are going to lead these people, all right? You're going to lead these people. And he does this in front of everyone. He shares this news with everyone. Goes on and then it says, be strong and courageous. All right, can you repeat that after me? Be strong and courageous, all right? For you must go with this people into the land that the Lord swore to their ancestors to give them, and you must divide it among them as their inheritance. Yeah, Moses is saying to Joshua, hey, Joshua, be strong and courageous. You are going to lead these people to the promised land. You are going to lead these people to what I am promising them. I am going to give these people their inheritance. And you, Joshua, I want you to go. I want you to lead them to this promised land. This promised land was, as Joshua would know, because he was earlier in that promised land, he was sent in as a spy, and he would know that that land was filled with everything that you would want in life. It was a land filled of like milk and honey, as the Bible refers it to. And also, at the same time, it was a land that was full of other nations, other giants, other enemies that easily could defeat this nation, God's nation. The story goes on then. Moses goes and then he says, the Lord himself goes before you and will be with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. And he says, do not be what? Afraid. Do not be discouraged, all right? I want you guys to remember those two words today as I speak the whole way through. What do you say? Do not be afraid and do not be discouraged. Moses is speaking to Joshua, and he says, hey, Joshua, I'm giving you the reins, all right? You are going to now lead these people when I die. And I'm telling you now that God is going to be with you wherever you go. Wherever you go, he's going to be with you. But be strong and courageous. Don't be afraid and do not be discouraged. Then in the book of Joshua, we pick up the story. This now, if we go to the next slide, thanks, is where Joshua is actually, hey, he is installed as the leader. He is now going to become the leader of these people. And this is what Joshua 1 speaks about. After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord, it came to pass that the Lord spoke to Joshua, the son of Nun, Moses' assistant, saying, says this, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now, therefore, arise. I just want to sit a bit and let you think about that, all right? Think a bit about that. This is God now speaking to Joshua. Moses already spoke to him. He said, hey, be strong and courageous. God's going to be with you wherever you go. Don't be afraid. Don't be discouraged. Now God comes to Joshua and he says, hey, Joshua, guess what? Your assistant, the guy you have been following all your life, the guy you have been under all your life, the person who has led this nation, the person who has taken all the, the slang from all the people, all the bad vibes, all the joy, all the miracles, guess what? Joshua, he's dead. And now, therefore, arise. Don't you think God could have been a bit nicer? He could have said something like, hey, okay, look, Josh, I'm really sorry that Moses has passed away. I know this is a season for grieving, and I mean, it's normal for any human, like if we've got such a close relationship with someone to be in a place where we can mourn and we can be sad and we can, just process all this stuff. But But God, in this time, as soon as Moses dies, he says, hey, Moses is dead, and now I want you to arise. I want you to arise. How many things are going on in our lives that we're just at the bank and we feel like they are just dead, like we're at the max, we're at that wilderness, like our finances are redlining it, our relationships are dead to the brim, like we just don't see anything resurrecting from that, and we're living in that discouragement and that fear and that wilderness. And God is saying, hey, Joshua, in that season, in that wilderness, arise, arise, arise. He says, go over this Jordan, you and all this people, to the land which I am giving to them, the children of Israel. If I was Joshua, I would think, man, God, like this is so much weight upon my shoulders. Like this is Moses. Like I can just see everyone's faces. I can just see how they're speaking amongst each other about who I am. Like God, I honestly, I've led one army through a battle, but honestly, without Moses, I am nothing. Honestly, God, I don't have the resources. I'm not even qualified. Me to lead all these people to the promised land? God goes on and he says this. He says, every place that the sole of your foot will tread upon, I have given you, as I said to Moses. Now that's a cool promise. If God was speaking to me, if I was Joshua, and he said, hey, Wes, I'm going to give you a pair of the coolest Nikes out, that wherever you step, wherever you walk, whatever battle you have, whatever enemy, whatever obstacle you have, if you just tread upon it, you're going to overcome it. Just like I did with Moses. But I would think, but hang on, wait a minute. Like think a bit about it. God, Moses is dead. He's dead. All the people are mourning. All the people are speaking amongst each other saying, how could Joshua even do this? The story goes on. God says then in verse 5, he says, no man shall be able to stand before you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will not leave you nor forsake you. Over and over again. It's kind of interesting, this whole story of Joshua, because for me, I'm thinking like, man, has God forgotten that he told Moses to tell Joshua this? Why does God keep repeating himself and saying, hey, be strong and courageous, and I'll be with you wherever you go. I'll be with you wherever you go. Yeah, we can clearly see that God is saying, hey, Joshua, I want you to understand that my presence is guaranteed. My presence is guaranteed in your life. It doesn't matter where you go, I will be with you. It doesn't matter if you're at the darkest pit of your life, I will be with you there. It doesn't matter if you lie and you cheat and you steal and you hate, I will be with you. God is promising Joshua, his presence. However, later we will see that his promises are actually optional. No man shall be able to stand before you. The story goes on then. And again, God says, hey, be strong and courageous, because you will lead these people to inherit the land I swore to their ancestors to give them. And what does inherit mean? What does inherit mean? What's that? Receive. Like just get. Like this is it. Like you can just get this. He says, hey, be strong and courageous, Joshua. He goes on. He says, be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey all the law my servant Moses gave you. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left, that you may be successful wherever you go. That you may be successful wherever you go. It goes on. He says, keep this book of the law always on your lips. Meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do everything written in it. Then you will be prosperous and successful. And then again, he ends off with this. He says, have I not commanded you, be strong and courageous? Do not be what? What's the word? Afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. This is just in the first chapter of Joshua. This is when God is saying to Joshua, hey Joshua, you are the guy I am calling. In this time when Moses is dead, I am challenging you and I'm saying to you, I'm speaking into your life and I'm saying, hey Joshua, I want you to arise and I want you to be strong and courageous. Joshua, I am guaranteeing you my presence. I am going to be with you wherever you go. I will never leave you or forsake you. And he says, hey, don't be afraid. Don't be discouraged. Joshua, I don't know what he's feeling at this point in time. I don't know what he's going through his mind, through his heart. But obviously, I'm thinking that obviously there's something up with Joshua, right? If God keeps repeating himself and saying, hey, be strong and courageous, we can only think that if he's saying be strong, then Joshua is what? Weak. If he's saying, hey, be courageous, then Joshua is probably not courageous. If he's saying, hey, do not be afraid, then Joshua is probably afraid. And if he's saying, do not be discouraged, I can guarantee you Joshua is feeling discouraged. You see, the thing about this story is that he needs to lead people who have just come out of slavery and have been promised a brighter future. God has said, hey, I have already given you the victory. I've already given you this victory. Like you can walk into this victory because I have fought this battle for you. My presence is guaranteed. But my promises, they're optional. And they're optional because I will only go wherever you want me to go, Joshua. Wherever you want me to go in your life. You see, sometimes in our journey of faith, we know God is with us wherever we are, but sometimes it is a journey of faith and it is a relationship with God, and those promises that he wants to give us and bless us with requires our obedience and our participation, because God will never go where we don't want him to go. He will only go as far as we want him to go. So our relationship with God is actually directly proportional to actually how we want our relationship with God to be. If I want my relationship with God to be as strong as ever, then my relationship with God will be as strong as ever, because God has already said, I will be with you wherever you go. Firstly, Moses says to Joshua, hey, Joshua, be strong and courageous. Then God says, hey, Joshua, be strong and courageous. Now Joshua's thinking about this, and the story goes on that now Joshua approaches his officers. He approaches the people who are going to speak to the whole nation and say, hey, we are going into the Jordan. We are going to cross the Jordan. We are going into this promised land. We're going into the destiny that God has actually fought for us already. And this is Joshua. He goes to his team and he says, hey, in 3 days' time. And I don't know why Joshua said 3 days' time, but maybe it's because he was still scared and afraid. But he says, hey, in 3 days' time, get ready. We're going to go into the promised land. And then Joshua, he orders the officers, and this is what he says, or this is what they say to him, sorry. They respond to Joshua, and they say this to Joshua. They say, hey, Joshua, whatever you have commanded us, we will do, and wherever you send us, we will go. Isn't that cool? Yeah, he gets the buy-in. Here, for the first time, they actually are recognizing his leadership, and they're saying, hey, Joshua, we are with you. It goes on, and this is what they say. They say, just as we fully obeyed Moses, so we will obey you. Only may the Lord your God be with you as he was with Moses. What? Again. Are you picking this up? Here, even his officers are saying to Joshua, hey, Joshua, just remember that God is going to be with you like he was with Moses. And then it goes on, and this is what they say to him. They say, whoever rebels against your word and does not obey it, whatever you may command them, will be put to death. Yes, those are the staff team that I want. Those guys, all right? Can you imagine Joshua? Yeah, he's like, yeah, these guys. But then they say to him, only be strong and courageous. He goes on. Oh, no, he doesn't. Anyway. Do you pick this up? Do you see what's happening here? Moses encourages Joshua and he says, hey, be strong and courageous. Don't be afraid. God's with you. God says it to him. Be strong and courageous. Don't be afraid. I'll be with you. I've already given you the victory. Then even his officers say to him, hey, be strong and courageous. God's with you. So my question is, why is God repeating himself so much? And the only thing that I can think of is maybe that Joshua doesn't believe this for himself. Maybe Joshua, this verse where we read, and it says, don't be afraid and don't be discouraged. Maybe it's those things that are taking control of his trust and his belief in who God is. There's two words here: fears and discouragement. And I thought, I don't know about you guys, but these come up in my everyday life continuously, all right? Fears and discouragement. Continuously, when I think about Joshua, I'm thinking like, man, he must have had so many fears. Can you imagine the shoes he had to fill of Moses? Can you imagine as Joshua, honestly, he must have been thinking, look, I've already been into the promised land as a spy, all right? And although I saw it was great, I know that the armies there are much bigger than who we are. Think a bit about like Joshua even thinking to himself like, I don't want to fail. I have a fear of failing. And discouragement. What I see Joshua is maybe, just maybe Joshua is living his life through fears and discouragement. I don't know about you, but sometimes I find myself living my life through fears and discouragement. Because these fears and these discouragement that fill my life, it sort of gets me thinking, oh man, actually, yeah, can I do this? Am I good enough? Or honestly, oh man, this has happened again. Oh, that person said this to me. And before we know it, we're basing all our behaviors and our actions on these fears and discouragement. I can tell you now that if I lived continuously through my life through discouragement, I'd only be on stage about 3 times a year. because I'll be petrified. But something has to happen outside of me that makes me realize that, hey, God's presence is guaranteed. But His promises are optional. His promises is where I need to maybe respond to His presence. His promises are maybe where I need to say, hey, I need to do something, God. What do I do? God reveals it to Joshua in this verse. He says this. He says, hey, Joshua, be strong and courageous. Don't be afraid. I'm going to be with you wherever you are. And he says this. He says, keep this book of the law. When? Always. He says, keep the book of the law always on where? On your lips. On your lips. He says, meditate on it day and night so that you may be careful to do everything written in it. Then you will be prosperous and successful. I think the reason some of us are not prosperous or successful into what God has already given us victory in is because we keep living in our fears. And because we keep living in our fears and discouragement, it is determining our future. Here God is saying, hey, keep this book of the law. Keep these promises that I'm giving to you, Joshua, on your lips. Sometimes when I wake up in the morning, I just feel afraid. I feel discouraged. But yeah, God is actually maybe saying something that, hey, you can feel afraid. You can feel discouraged no matter what you're going through in life, but you don't have to be afraid. You don't have to be discouraged because my presence is guaranteed. He says, what I want you to do is I want you to meditate on it day and night. Now, often we think of this word meditate, and we think of this word as just being quiet, right? Just taking some time, just reading a word and just being quiet and meditating on it. And that's one aspect of this word. But another aspect of this word is actually declaring it, actually speaking it out, actually claiming it, actually saying it. Because I found often that I am actually listening more to what's going on in my mind, and I should be actually talking more of what God is actually promising in His Word. I don't know, it might sound crazy to you. I'm pretty crazy. But honestly, I feel and I sense that God is actually saying to us, yeah, hey, what I want you to do is actually start speaking these promises out in your everyday life. When you wake up, like, choose to not be discouraged. You can say it. You can speak it. Meditate upon it all day and night. There's this book I've been reading. And I actually don't like sharing these kind of books, with you guys because, I don't know if you guys can see it. Has anyone read this book? James Clear's Legacy. It's called Legacy. Tell you why I don't really like it. It says, what the All Blacks can teach us about the business of life. All right? So, yeah, there's even a word here, unput-it-downable. All right? It's the word that they quote here. But I thought, man, the best way I can maybe try and illustrate and share this with you, and because the All Blacks did do pretty well last night, I thought I'd share this opening page with you guys. And I think what they are doing is similar to what God is actually encouraging us as His people to do. The author writes about this, and he starts speaking about the challenge. He starts speaking about the haka, all right? And this is what he says. I've got to give him to this. This is pretty good stuff, okay? So listen up. Opposing teams, all right, they face the haka in different ways. Some try to ignore it, others advance on it. Most stand shoulder to shoulder to face it. Whatever their outward response, inwardly, the opposition know that they are standing before more than a collection of 15 individual players. They are facing a culture, an identity, an ethos, a belief system, and a collective passion and purpose beyond anything they have faced before. Now, unfortunately, this morning I have to agree with that, all right? Because it's true. The All Blacks record shows that this is true. This is the key point, though. It says this: often, by the time the haka reaches its crescendo, the opposition have already lost. Did you get that? Did you get that? I'm going to read it one more time. Often by the time the haka reaches its crescendo, all right? That's probably the time when their tongue is almost on the ground, all right? And the faces are so scary. He says the opposition have already lost. For rugby, like business and like much of life, is played primarily in the mind. I thought a bit about this and I thought, man, maybe this is what God was trying to illustrate to Joshua, to say, hey, Joshua, like over and over and over again, I'm telling you to be strong and courageous. I'm with you. But somehow your fears and your discouragement and the situations that you are facing in life are taking hold of what I have for you. And he's saying, now I want you to declare it. I want you to put my words on your lips. I want you to go and sort of approach your opposition and approach them with the victory that has already been won for you. I'm giving it to you. The promised land is yours. I have a purpose for your life. And that's why I'm giving it to you. Just be strong and courageous. Wake up in the morning and choose who you will serve. I thought a good way to illustrate this is just putting some of these promises down. If we go to the next slide, like in the morning, like we can say, hey, you know what, no matter how I feel, I will try to imitate him. I will declare it because I know he's got his best interest for me. I will think about what is pure and holy and right. I will be joyful. Why? Because I'm speaking it. I will pray continually. I will give thanks in all circumstances, even though I can feel as if, hey, I'm in the wilderness and I don't see how on earth I'm going to reach the promised land. Why? Because I'm with you. I'll never leave you, no matter what. He says, hey, yeah, it goes on. It says, I will be kind to the poor. Why? Because I choose to be. It goes on. I will focus my heart on heavenly things. I will think of things above, not below. I will stop wrestling with the stuff that I'm talking to myself in my mind and listening to, but I'll contemplate on God's word, which has a bigger, brighter purpose and future for my life. I will be kind and compassionate. I will live above reproach. I will make the most of every opportunity. You see, I think there's something about this that Joshua realized, and you'll see as we journey through this series, we'll see how valuable this is. By just claiming, by meditating God's promises, it can already change our position, our wilderness, our circumstances, and no matter what we're facing, we can have the ability to arise and to be strong and to be courageous. I love the fact that Joshua, his name actually means that the Lord conquers, that Jesus actually saves. So I thought about this, that isn't that peculiar that even Joshua, his own name, was echoing to him continuously that, hey, God has already won the battle for you. The victory is yours. And now all I'm saying is, hey, respond to it. Respond to it. Choose to declare it. Meditate on it. And you'll see how this can transform your life, because Joshua is Jesus saves. Today we're going to end with the song that we started with. And I want us to stand, and I don't know everyone's situation yet, but I know that you could have come into church today and you could be facing the toughest challenge of your life. You could know someone who's facing that toughest challenge in your life. And today you have the opportunity to say, hey God, no matter where I am in life, no matter even if I've just lost one of my best friends, I can arise because I know that you will be with me, and I'm going to declare it. I'm going to speak this truth. I'm going to sing this truth, and I'm going to claim your promises. So as we sing this song, as we close off, I want to encourage us to stand and let's sing it like the All Blacks would do their haka. You know, I have never seen, I wish I have seen this, but I've never seen it, that there'd just be one All Black who'll just, put his hand in his pocket and just be like, stick his tongue out halfway. But no, when they get their game face on, they get in front of their opposition, their enemy, whatever is in front of them, and they give everything they have to declare, to say, hey, we've already won this battle. God is saying that to you today. He says, hey, no matter what obstacle you're facing in life, no matter what your opposition is, I've won this battle for you. And now let's declare it with our lips. Let's sing it. Let's praise him. Let's give him the glory.